My name is Walerian Jaworski. I live at South Towson Farm, Melksham, Wiltshire. And I was born in Poland 1926 on Christmas Eve. I had an older brother and a younger sister, and my father and mother had a farm which they ran, and the land was given to my father by the Polish government as I suppose as a gift for taking part in the war with the Bolsheviks in 1920. He was a volunteer, and that's how we finished up in eastern Poland, because that's where the land was plentiful, and they started a farm there in 1923, I think. Started with nothing. I think they had some help with the government, from the government, to establish the cattle herd and horses to work on the farm. And when I was born, I suppose the farm was then already running. And the things I remember, it was they were quite busy with all the things that the farmers do, and that's looking after the cows, milking, breeding, selling some of the stock. They had horses, and they also, one time they kept quite a lot of pigs. Unfortunately, that scheme didn't work very well, because the people that were buying goods from the farm were mostly a Jewish population in town who didn't have any land, so they would buy flour, buy potatoes, buy meat, buying the calves that we didn't want, but of course they wouldn't buy pigs, so that was a failure. But they still carry on with few pigs for our own use, which was normally shared out with all the other farmers, because there was no refrigeration, so the meat had to be smoked and preserved in the chimneys. Yeah. The other things I can remember is the number of people that were employed regularly on the farm. And that was a lad that used to look after horses and probably did some plowing. There was a lad that used to look after the cattle. I think there was about 20, probably more sometimes. And there was a lady that used to come help my mother with the housework, which was quite a busy housework, because we had to feed all the people that work on the farm. So it wasn't just family; it was the people that work. So when we were having our meals, all the staff were having meals with us. That's breakfast, dinner, and supper. Yeah. The school was eventually moved into part of our house, so I didn't have to walk very far. I just went from the back of the house to the front, because there was just one room was taken over with few school benches. I think there might have been about 18 pupils, and some were very young and some were older, so there was lessons which were called loud and silent. And that's how the school was run by the teacher, yeah. Um, so after 4 years in a school, I had to go to school in town to finish my primary education for 2 years. And I lodged with the Jewish family. A Jewish lad used to come over and do the bricklaying for the fathers if he needed anything done. So they knew one another. And so I lodged with the family. There was two girls and a boy. And one of the girls was in the same school, in the same class as me. So they were happy days at this town and a school, and yeah, they were a lovely family. Unfortunately, they all perished during the German occupation later. I was just finished my primary education, and father was talking to send me to the engineering college in a bigger town, which was probably Pinsko, Brześć, Brest on Bug. But it was just talk. Unfortunately, the war broke out in September, so we all confined to the house. I didn't attend the school in town because we didn't know what's going on. The time was, they tried to bomb the town, but the bomb has missed the town and landed in the meadows by the river. Our railway station was bombed. Anyway, it was soon all over, but in the meantime, we had the Red Army enter Poland from the east. There was a post coming once a week. With the post came the newspapers from Poland, from central Poland, And of course, reading the newspapers and seeing the pictures, which, stuck in my mind, when I saw first of all, I saw the pictures of Italian troops invading Abyssinia. And there was a picture of the Italian pilot throwing a bomb manually with his hand, on the people. They were standing outside the straw houses with the what they call them, sticks, So there was very uneven war, and of course I thought, why do people do those things, to another people? But then, of course, was as Hitler become the leader of Germany, there was more and more stories in the Polish newspapers with picture of his parades and his speeches and everything. And of course, by then, we had a radio, because, in the 20s, late 20s, we didn't have any radios. So then we got the radios. Of course, we were listening to the news and all this, the political talks and things that Poland was going to do in case, there's no agreement. And they signed the agreement, no aggression for 10 years. And they signed another agreement for against aggression with Stalin. But in the end, they just decided to do their own thing, never mind what the agreements were, Well, as far as I know and experience, that we haven't found any nastiness from the local population. They weren't living very close to the place where the farm was, so we didn't have we didn't cross the path, so to say. We sort of kept away from one another. The only place we would meet, it would be in town, which was a market town, every Tuesday. Everybody gone up there to sell and buy, so you would meet all sorts of people. It's if you needed somebody to work on the farm, you probably on Tuesday you make arrangement to meet somebody that would organize some sort of labor team, especially the harvest time, haymaking time, and of course in the autumn the potatoes. Everything was done manually. There was no machines of any kind. Maybe the only machine we had was the thrashing machine and some other gadgets to clean the corn and all that. But the rest of it was driven by the horses, unlike around things, which was connected to the gadget inside the inside the building where all the work was done. Outside on the fields, it was all manually. The manure was taken out on carts into the fields with horses and spread out manually on the field. Then, of course, you had to plow it with horses and do all the other things. While in a primary school, we went to certain lessons about the religion. So, of course, we had lessons in Christianity and about, Christ's teaching. But there was no church, not a Catholic church, and there was no priest. Priest used to come twice a year, and he would come to town where there was more Catholic population, and we would have to go out to town to attend the mass, and also after mass probably get some instructions on the faith. As far as the other religions are concerned, they didn't try to influence us in any way. At the school in town, there was pupils who were Jewish, who were Ukrainian, Belarus, or Lithuanian, and once a week, one day, I think we had different teachers coming. So there was a rabbi, there was a Russian Orthodox Pope or something it's called, priest, and just the ordinary teacher would instruct us on the Roman Catholic religion, and that's as far as the religion goes. I think the people in town and in the villages were quite friendly towards us because that meant employment. The villagers were very poor. People were very poor. I know some of the children used to come to our school in our house. My mother used to give them breakfast because they haven't eaten, and it's probably the only meal they had a day. And of course, there was also plenty of food on the farm. Mother used to break bread twice a week, and of course there was a lot of milk, cheese, and these sort of products that you produce on the farm. So one or two children being fed didn't sort of cost much. As far as the Jewish population was concerned, they all living in town, and some of the streets were just owned by the Jewish traders. There were butchers, tailors, shoemakers, or cobblers, whatever. So if you wanted a pair of shoes, or you wanted a jacket or a coat, winter coat or a hat, You would have to go to a town and they'll make you one. And as I said before, the bricklayer used to be a friend of my father's who used to come to do some brickwork. And of course, if you needed probably carpenter or anything else, you probably find that he probably was Jewish. You want to take a photograph. There was a Jewish photographer. They would sell ice cream on a market day. They would make ice cream. Yeah, so they control all the business in town. There was Jewish synagogue and a rabbi. And the rabbi had a license to sell yeast, and no other Jew were allowed to sell yeast. He was a monopoly on yeast. That's how he made his living. And if you needed to bake a bread or make a cake, you had to go to rabbi to get some yeast. As far as the other church, there was, they never pushed their religion, but as boys we used to go to the services just to find out what it was all about. And I even used to go with my mates, Jewish boys, to a synagogue, but I didn't fit them because I had a blonde hair, and they used to hide it in by the mitzvah. But I think the rabbi, all the seniors knew who I was, but they never said anything. So I was curious to find out, what the others were doing. So it was quite fun living in town, Okay. I also learned some of the language because you mix with all the other people, all the other boys. So I spoke local language, and I did pick up some of the Jewish language. I also had some friends. There was a colony of German settlers, and one of them used to live on a way to school. So he used to wait for me, and used to walk to school together. So there was a mixture of people, and we seemed to have respected one another, and everything was hunky-dory. I think the reason was that we were quite a distance away. There was about 4 different villages, but they were 4 or 5 miles away, so they weren't sort of influenced, and they had no problem with their land or with our land. We had no problem. They sort of kept away from one another, and I think they respected one another. And also they were dependent for extra money during the seasons, and in the winter they also used to hire our horses, because the horses weren't used in the winter on the farm when there was a bad weather. They used to hire horses and go into the forest, and they used to bring the logs to the railway station. That's why we used to make some money that way, see, by renting our horses and carrying the wood for the railway to be probably transported to some town for, I don't know, whether for building material or for firewood, I don't know. But that was a winter job for the horses, but that was done by the outsiders. They would look after the horses and hire them, and they would bring them. During the Polish rule, I didn't find anything. I never heard anything that there was any problem. The father was like elected the head man, so anything that was going on in this area, he would know, because all the people were coming to him, because anything that was happened there, whether any crime or any fires, police from town would come to him, and he had to be present during any investigation. So all the information that or any problem that was caused in this area would come to him. So I was always there listening, and I never found anything sort of unpleasant. I've seen some things in town during the market day where people used to sell things, made some money and spend it on vodka, and then they was drunk, and of course there was a punch-up, so somebody fell in a river and drowned, that was, yeah, things like that. But there was no sort of organized or any aggressive sort of approach to one another, The Jews were tolerated, so were the Poles, so were the Ukrainians by the other people. And at school they never asked you who your father was or anything. They were treated equally, Yeah. I suppose just before the war was declared, most of the men were called up into the army because they were all army reservists, except my father, because he was the one that held the job as a headman, so somebody had to stay behind. Of course, when the war was declared, we heard a bit what was going on on the Polish border, and I remember listening to the radio that the German crossed the border in southwest, and was entering a Polish town of Częstochowa. Then, of course, they went up north, and they entered the Polish port of Gdynia and attacked the Polish naval base at Hel, which I think the battle lasted for 17 days or more. And later, of course, we hear that the German troops were moving from the East Prussia towards Warsaw from the north, and the other lot was heading for the southern towns of Krakow and Ternopil and going towards Lviv, I suppose. So those bits and pieces were coming through the radio, and eventually the radio station must have been bombed because we never had any information at all. So we were just sitting and waiting when they're going to arrive around our place. But that hasn't happened because about a fortnight after the Germans invaded the Poland, Stalin decided to move his troops in the east after the agreement with Hitler to divide Poland into two parts. So now we hear the trains being filled with Russian soldiers, and because the railway was close to our house, we can hear the soldiers singing Russian songs, which I still remember to this day. And nothing happened for a while. And then, of course, the communist commissar visited us and took stock of everything that, not just people, but also the stock of animals and land and all sorts of details they wanted to know. And but while this was going on, I'm talking between the time of the end of September and Christmas, there was a lot of things were happening in town rather than in the country. People that we used to know as a businessman, the people that own the flour mill, people, I don't know, they own big shops that obviously made some money in the past. They were disappearing at night, you know. And then the next thing was that we heard a lot of teachers disappear and policemen's family. So they were after the civil servant. Bit by bit at night they used to come, and in the morning the story goes around that so-and-so disappeared at night. And that was the, I suppose, KBG with the help of the Russian troops were taking them away. And later on we hear that Hitler made a deal with Stalin that while the Russians were occupying the eastern part of Poland, all the people of German descent would be taken by Hitler into the western Poland. And what we learn later, that the Polish families in around the cities like Poznań and Gdańsk and they were thrown out of their homes with leaving everything, just what they wore, put on a train and sent to central Poland. They were dumped on the stations. And that's where the German families from the east were taken on Christmas Eve, 1939. They were put on the trains and taken to Western Poland, where they were given homes and everything that was in them. But of course, we didn't know that at the time. We learned that afterwards. And next thing was a story going around, because the certain things happen every week or so, that the next people that are on a list are the Polish military settlers, which was, one of them was my father. So on the 9th of February, the commissar arranged a meeting of all the men in one of the houses, and he was talking about what they're going to do on the land, and give him a program who would plant potatoes, who would plant corn, who would plant oats, who would plant carrots, beetroot, and all this kind of thing. So every farmer was given certain things to grow. But the reason they had this meeting, they're making sure that everybody is going to be at home at 3 o'clock in the morning when they gone home after the meeting. And that's what happened. Yeah, the men went home, went to bed, and a few hours later they were woken up by the knocking at the door, you know, and there was Red Army soldiers with the long bayonets in the doorway, and some of the local militia, which the communist authorities created by the Russians, create like a local militia, which were boys, a little bit older than me. They probably went to school the same time as my brother did, and some of them I knew because you know, I used to see them in town, and one of them started a photography business, and they used to come and farm to do the photographs. And when I realized who he was, I said, "What the hell are you doing here with that lot?" So he never answered. He just never answered. And yeah, one of the Jewish boys, unfortunately, got tangled up with the local communists. Unfortunately, when the Germans attacked the Soviet Union, all those poor devils perished in a like a clay pit where they used to dig the clay for brick making. So they were all, shot and buried in there, from town, hundreds of them. So that was grandparents, parents, and children and grandchildren. They all, perished in that clay pit. So yeah, and now it was the beginning of certain things. The Russians and well, not so much the communist system has now tried to create a division between the different population, between Jews, the Poles, and the Ukrainians, the Belarus. So they also found the volunteers. They would do the dirty work for them. And anyway, I'm still talking now before Christmas, because once things sort of quiet down, my father said, because the schools were open again, I was sent back to school. And unfortunately, the school were not in Polish, but in Russian. So I had to master the Russian reading, writing, because I could speak, but I couldn't write in their alphabet. So I had to learn that. And for about, I think, 2 months, I attended school. But when the cold weather came, Father said, boy, there's no way I'm going to have you at school, because we don't know what's going to happen to us. So I stayed at home and done some homework there. Used to read a lot of books. And of course, on the 10th of February, when they come in, they just give us, we got an hour to pack. Take all the clothes, your bedding, and enough food for a fortnight, because you're going for a trip. So that was it. Mother packed all the things. The father wasn't allowed to do anything. They put him on a floor and just guarded him. And mother and my older brother has to do the packing. And of course, I had to do the running about, because the bread was in a in a bakehouse, which was outside. He wasn't in the house, so I had to collect the bread, collect some of the cheese and all the things, and put us on a sleigh, and that was it. Within an hour, we were gone. And on the way, because we were at the end of this settlement, as we went forward, we were picking up all the other settlers, so it was like a convoy of horses and sleighs, and the Russian officers on the horses, and the Red Army boys at the end of the sleigh with a rifle. And and that was our escort all the way to the railway station, not local railway station, but the one which was, I think, must have been about, 15 kilometers away. I know we got there about 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So there were railway coaches already waiting with the doors open, and like a walkway out of a timber. And we would just pull up outside, and there was about, 4 families in one wagon. And then they shut the door, and that was it. Yeah. So the next day, the train was moved to a main railway station that connected Poland with the Soviet Union on the main line. And of course, from there, they took us all around the southern side of Moscow to up north to the railway that ran from, I think it's from Smolensk, bypass Moscow, and to the north of Archangel and Kotlas and those places, Murmansk. Yeah. So eventually we, got farther north, and it got colder and colder, and it was already yeah, the snow was getting higher and bigger, and the trees were covered in snow, because it was cold in Poland on the 10th of February. But this was, it looks as if the winter lasted much longer, because you could see the certain things which you didn't see in Poland, because the winter didn't last that long, you know. Anyway, we got to Kotlas, and they supplied again sleighs and single horses, and the families were put on the sleighs, and the women were the drivers, and we traveled down the river for, I think, 4 or 5 days. Yeah, and used to stay at night in a local villages with the local families. Once we got to the camp, the men were used with the tools for felling down trees, so the axes and saws and different things, and had to go to work felling trees. But for some reason, I don't really know why, they decided to move us to another camp, this time up the river. So because the rivers, the ice started to melt, we had to make rafts, and we traveled on rafts to the to the next camp, which was established before, probably by the Ukrainian people that were sent up there, and before that probably by Russian people. And they were staffed by the ex-prisoners. The chap in charge of a camp was a major in the army that must have done or said something against Stalin, so he were put to the Gulag, and then made serve rest of his sentence as a manager of the camp. A lot of others that were working there, the people that dealt with the sorting out the places where the men had to go to cut the trees, and then the trees had to be transported to the river banks, and on the river banks they used to stack the trees for the spring water to carry them to the Kotlas, where they had timber mills, and all that timber used to be cut down there at the end of a river which joined the river Dvina, which was quite a wide river which ran towards the north of North Sea. At the camp, because I was under 14, they wouldn't let me work to earn any money, because the people that work there get paid for money, and the money they had to use to pay for the bread and the soup. So while I was waiting for my 14th birthday to get some sort of a job, I was helping the families to gather wood, which we needed for. But most of it was just warming up the soup, which was bought in the camp's canteen. And there wasn't any dinners as such, it was just soup and bread. And when I got 14, I was given a job as a marksman, so I used to measure the logs, and I used to chisel out the Roman numbers, the size of log. If the log was at the thick end, 6 inches, I would chisel out Roman V and 1. And it was 10 inches, I would sort of put X on there. And that's how they kept the record of what kind of logs they had. And of course they had to be then sorted out when they were stored at the river banks. And and in the spring all those logs will go into the river and sent to the mills hundreds of miles away. And well, that was nothing sort of exciting happened in the camp. It was every day just work to earn enough rubles to pay for bread and soup, more or less. Our clothes were wearing out, and it wasn't a proper clothes for the winters that they were up north. So everybody had to repair their clothes the best they could, had to repair the shoes, and kept all the rags so in the winter they could wrap their shoes to keep warm or stop from sliding. Like everything else up there, there was no vitamins. But with the advice given to us by the Russian woman who used to supply the food and all the bits and pieces, they were told that the people on the day off, on Sunday, go in the forest and look for the berries, red berries, and black berries that were frozen under the snow. And of course, as May come along, the snow started to melt, and there was tons of the stuff about. So we used to go up there Sunday, just stuff ourselves with those berries and collect some for the families to have some sort of a drink. And I think people that went up there on Sundays never suffered from their bad sight, which affected quite a lot of men, women and children, because a lot of them used to walk to work and from work in a semi-darkness by holding to one another and follow one another, because they couldn't see where they were going. So it was one of the terrible things that was happening. And I think those people that did consume some of those berries avoided that problem. Anyway, we never stayed another winter, because when the German attacked Soviet Union, we were told, we were given Soviet Union citizenship, and we shall be treated as a Soviet citizens. So we wonder whether we're going to get able to get some more food. And there was slight improvement in the kitchen, because we used to laugh that since we became Russians, we had some bits of meat floating in a soup, which we never had before. And the bread was still, in a short supply. So that was limited to the same amount. And then a few weeks later, another commissar came along. He said, well, you are not Soviet citizens, you're Polish citizens, and you're free to go. So I suppose they tried to make us Soviet citizens, to involve us in a war against the Germans. Anyway, then we had messages that there's a Polish army being formed in Kazakhstan. So anybody wants to join have to travel by their own means. And the only way we could do it is by building rafts. So men went to the forest, cut some logs, and joined them together with some twigs, and women and children travel on those logs all the way to Kotlast, and a lot of grown-ups just walked on a river bank all the distance to the Kotlast. Of course, the weather wasn't too bad, so we used to stop and meet at the river banks every night and sort of create some sort of a meal and have a hot drink, and then the next morning we carry on. So I think it took us then 10 days, to get to the railway station. But then we never had much money, so the only way we could pay for the carriage to take us to Kazakhstan is to sell the logs to the locals, because there was a big demand for the wood, because the winter was coming and everybody needed wood to heat up their houses. So I think they got quite a good price for the logs and pay for the wagon to take us to Kazakhstan. But there was even then we had some problems, because the people from the camp said that the wood was taken from their forest and that we had no right to sell it. It was their food, their wood. Yeah, but anyway, somehow they make the deal of some sort, and with the money we could manage to hire this wagon, which was attached to all sorts of trains going first to the east and then down to the south to Kazakhstan, which took us, I think, probably 6 weeks. But the food was short, and and there was hardly any money, so I don't know how half of us managed to survive. Well, when we were in Kazakhstan, after the trip to Uzbekistan, to the what's it called, the plantation, the cotton plantation. Yeah, the army organizing itself, and we heard that there was idea of taking on boys into the army as a cadets, and so because I was then almost 15, I decided to see if they take me on, and they did. Everything was hunky-dory till I got a diarrhea, so that ended up in hospital, and I was pretty sick, and I've seen the poor lads dying all around us, with the typhoid and diarrhea. And the doctor advised me to, after a few days, that because I said I felt better, to get out of hospital and get on a train, because he was going to Krasnoyarsk and get out of the country. So that's what I did. And we traveled on the oil tanker to Persia, and as I landed there, I was taken ill again in an ambulance to Tehran, to the hospital, and which was run by the, I think, Polish doctors and English doctors, and I spent there, I think, 3 weeks. I got better again. I was sent back to the unit which was stationed at the Tehran airport and over there, as many people experience, we were fed with lamb and rice. So after 2 years of starvation, that nearly finished me off, because the following day And when I woke up, I couldn't get up. I didn't have a strength to get up. And 4 of my mates picked me up in a blanket and carried me to a hospital, which was next door to this airline hangar. And and while I was there, they gave up on me because they sent the priest to give me a last rites. Right. And all I remember him praying in Latin, and they all buggered off and left me. When I come round, I don't know how long I was out, there was a man in a British uniform sitting by my bed, and he had his cap on one knee and a book on another. And every evening he would turn up and he would just sit there. And I thought he was one of the doctors in British Army uniform. But when I did get better and we moved to Palestine, I had a bit of a accident on the maneuvers, and I broke my arm, and I was sent to the 43rd General Hospital in Jerusalem, which was the hospital for the British soldiers that were fighting in Libya. Of course, then I learned a bit of English, and I learned that my guardian angel in a British uniform was actually an English padre. Yeah, so it was English padre that was sitting by my bed, I suppose praying, because the book must have been a Bible. Yeah, but of course I didn't know any. Couldn't tell the difference between British ranks, you know. So that was quite something. I still think back and see him sitting there. Yeah. Any other happenings? Well, the college I was in was pretty normal thing. There was like a military discipline around on the military style. So, yeah, you had uniforms, you parade. Then we were issued the rifle to learn learn how to take it apart and how to use it. But otherwise, we were heading for this. It's known in here as the O level. But before I could finish it, I came my 17th birthday, and I volunteered for the RAF, but those people in charge decided that they needed some young boys in the army, so we were 100 of us was sent to join the Polish Carpathian Lancers, and but before we joined them, we went on on some courses to train as a gunners or telegraphists or drivers, or because we were part of a cruise in armored cars. And I became a gunner and a telegraphist for the 76mm gun on a half track, which was moved around. So when I joined the regiment in Italy, I was hoping to join this crew on some half track with a gun on the top. Unfortunately, they decided to send us to Monte Cassino when the unit went as infantry. So we had to have a course in how to operate the 3-inch mortars. So yeah. So in April we crossed the Leary Valley and took positions on the right side of Polish Second Corps. Yeah, next to New Zealanders. But our job was just to hold Germans in case they decide to attack us on the right flank, but they never did. But they were quite a pain, because they could see us from the high hilltops, and you couldn't move in the daytime. And they play in cat and mouse with us. So all the work had to be done at night, and we had a lot of problems with cable, telephone cables. So my job was to go around at night and repair them. And on one of my visits to the forward section, that they come across the little puppy, which we called Benito, after the Italian dictator, because he had a large head and short legs. And the lads were a bit worried that he might bark or make a noise missing the mother. So I had to take it to our little hut on the side of a hill and look after her. Yeah, so most of the time I was there. My companion was a little Italian dog, Benito. Unfortunately, we had to leave him behind when the battle was finished. And the only action we've taken part was, it wasn't on the 18th or before the 18th of May. It was on the 19th of May, where the regiment was ordered to take over 2 highest peaks overlooking the Abbey of Monte Cassino, which was Pizzocorno and Mount Caira. So on the 19th, the 3rd Squadron went up there, and the mortar platoon went as to assist him. And this is where I unfortunately lost my radio, which I was carrying on my back, and I had 2 shrapnel holes in my helmet. Fortunately, I had a scarf on my head, which was used as a hat, because my helmet was too big and used to wobble, so I put this. And the shrapnels has damaged my scarf, so I was annoyed about that. But luckily, I was never harmed. But I didn't know that till the next morning when I took the helmet off, and I couldn't take the scarf and the hat apart. And I realized I had 2 holes in them and a bit of shrapnel inside. I also been, because the explosion was so close, my radio was damaged, and I was knocked over down the hill. So after that, I became a stretcher. Used to help with the wounded and with ammunition first of all, and then we were helping to carry the wounded down the hill, which wasn't a very pleasant job, because the poor men, they were hurt, and bad enough to carry somebody that's still on the level, but to try to take him down to down the hill, it's not a joke. The 8 men used to handle the stretcher, and we still had a problem. And we tied up the men to the stretcher with our shirts. Otherwise they would, slip down the hill. So that's the job that, I didn't enjoy, and it's always makes me quite annoyed about the war, that yeah, the way people suffer. And after all that, we had 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks in a little village in southern Italy called Montegano, which sort of patched up our uniform and got our armor cars back, and yeah, and we had some food and wine, which was quite good because the food at the front line wasn't all that clever. They used to bring in at night, and sometimes you couldn't go there because of the firing, and the rest of the day you lived on the biscuits and corned beef and the other, yeah. And you had to boil your water, which was quite tricky. And the only time you could do it when there was mist over the hilltops, yeah. So anyway, while in Montegano, we seemed to recover. Then the next job was in a battle for town of Loreto, in the western side of Italy on the Adriatic coast. After my training in Egypt, they were going to send us to Italy to join the regiment, who was already in action at the River Sangro. And when we got to Port Said, we were loaded on this old boat that probably was carrying the cattle or a sheep in Australia. There was no cabins. There was just hammock, hundreds and hundreds of hammocks.